Hello, everybody. Hey, hopefully, looks like we've got about 14 people on, which is great. And we'll do a bit of a show. If you can, let me know that you can hear everything, including the guitar. And hopefully it's not, what was I going to say? Hopefully it's not totally out of sync. I checked the sync beforehand, and as is normal, there's the usual Sunday morning, oh no, this is no longer working with the live stream. Thanks, Marty. Appreciate it. Excellent. This time it was the display mode because, mostly we're going to be talking about Guitarists instead of the sound. But so let me see if I can see some of the if I can say hi to folks. All right. Hey, Matt. Good to see you. And it looks like Matt is saying Mike Campbell. Oh, no. Hold on a second. Might have to change something that I thought I had gotten back. This is really annoying. Hopefully everything's okay. Not crazy. And Mr. Thomas V says, look at the gorgeous Strat back there. Yeah. So we'll turn up the volume on the instrument a little bit. Hopefully it's going to work. It looks like the keyframes are off. I had to mess around with stuff. I wanted to show the display, and of course it's not working this morning, and I had to reconfigure everything last second, so I apologize if I missed some things. We will see. Looks like it's not going the greatest. But we'll give it a shot and see what we can do. Let's see. Where is it? Stream. Oh, I can't remember where to enter the keyframes, but I opened up the tool and okay, well, we'll just hope that it works enough. All right, so as we're waiting for some folks to get on, we got 20 people. It looks like we'll take some, I'll just kind of comment on some of the things that are going on. So Matt says Mike Campbell. Lighten Up Francis says Samantha Fish. Love that name. Reference to Stripes, I gotta believe, on that one. Andy Powell, Wishbone Ash. Yeah, absolutely. Good. James Severin's up. All right, cool. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do a little bit of a jam here. We'll do something that's a little bit different from what I usually do, and we'll see. We'll just give it a shot, and we'll talk a little bit about it, and then we'll get into the guitarist.
2, 1, 2, 3.
Just gonna turn up that background just a little bit. All right, here we go.
1.
Let's have a little fun.
2, 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Let's just do it that once through. All right, so a little Mixolydian jam. Hopefully you could hear that. Not sure you could. All right. Let's see who's on now. Okay. Let's see. G-Max says he's underrated. I don't know. Joey Landreth. Do you mean Sonny Landreth? Is that the same guy? Says Mark Siebes. Marty McFly is underrated. Scott Gorham. So David Smith, who is Scott Gorham? Oh, BOC guitarist. You mean Buck Dharma? Yeah. Interesting. Derek St. Holmes. Well, he was a good singer anyway. Rick Derringer. All right. Thank you, Francis. Or Lighten Up Francis. So yeah, so that's something I don't normally do. Hopefully the video's okay. I'm getting all sorts of error messages from YouTube. So maybe we will end it up. Jack Muller says, I like the Mira. How many guitars have you got? I'm not sure. I haven't checked my Reverb account to see how many sold, but I don't know. On the order of too many. That's for sure. Hey, Phil M. Phil M's on. Fenderman is on. All right, Scott Gorham of Thin Lizzy. Okay, well, I think, yeah, it's a cool guitar. I'm digging it too. It plays unbelievably well. And, yeah, I was going to play the Fender for the opening, but this just does it so much better. And, at least in my opinion, does this sort of stuff so much better. It really needs the humbuckers, but it plays so much better, which is nice too. Anyway, I do dig the Strat, so let me switch to that now. And we'll get ready for the discussion here. All right. Might have to turn it up a bit because of low output, and I've got hum now. But you know how that goes, Strat players. Crank it up. Let's just play it clean. Yuck. All right. Dicking around there. All right, let's see. Okay. So, here's the reason why I was playing around this morning to try and get some comments on, or get this onto the screen, and it's because I didn't want to have to print all this stuff out. But here we go. So these are underappreciated guitarists. Okay? So I'm using the word underappreciated. I think people use the word underrated too often, and it doesn't make sense. And what I mean by that is, let me give an example that we'll probably run across here today, and that is Elliot Easton. So I posted an Elliot Easton video. A lot of people say he's underrated. I don't think he's underrated. I don't know anybody who knows Elliot Easton's play that doesn't rate him very highly. The question is he underappreciated? Should he be even more well-known than he is? That sort of thing. I think that makes some sense, but I don't know any guitarists who underrate the guy. I don't know anybody saying that he sucks. So anyway, that's why I used underappreciated. So this is not a list of things to. This is not a list of things of my top 10 or anything like that. But it's just a list to get us talking about it. And I put it into a few categories. I see Phil M. saying Terry Kath. So here's the first category. The first category is people who are famous. People who are famous, but they don't get their due. So they're famous, but maybe they should appear on top 10 lists, or maybe it's rhythm guitar that's that's underappreciated. Like rhythm is 90% to playing guitar, right? You play in a band, lead is just a small piece of it. Rhythm is much more important. And yet great rhythm players don't get super high marks. If you play fast, if you play fast, then you have a chance at being a guitar hero. All right, so let me take you through at least some of my list for this one, and I think some of you have already named some things. Ooh, Mr. Thomas V says Martin Barry. I never know how to pronounce the guy's name. Barry? I think it's Barry. Okay, so, Bob Weir, I like that one too. I didn't think of him. So here's my first one that I'm going to put up here, Leslie West. Now, why do I put Leslie West up here? Everybody who knows him says he's a great player, great tone, and all that. But it always seemed to me that when people talk about great guitar players around 1970, he doesn't usually get put up there. And he was more melodic and had the best tone. He had a better tone than just about anybody. So Leslie West. I see a bunch of people talking about it. Jeff Skunk Baxter is being mentioned. Okay. Here's my second one, and this guy's not... Oh, by the way, I'm usually doing rock players. I'm going to make an exception on this one. And the exception that I'm doing on this one is because he is so influential, and he doesn't get anywhere near the due that he's deserved compared to the other two, and you'll know what I'm talking about right now. And it's Freddie King. So Freddie King was probably the biggest influence on Clapton. You can hear so much Freddie King in his playing and some other players. And yet people talk about B.B. King a lot. People talk about Albert King. But almost never about Freddie King. So Freddie King is there. All right, here's my third one. Famous, but didn't quite make it into the pantheon. And that's Lindsay Buckingham. Now, Lindsay, let me see if I can see this. Lindsay Buckingham. Now, Lindsay Buckingham, and I see James Severin saying all the Kings are great. Absolutely, but lots of people talk about Albert King. Lots of people, many people talk about B.B. King. I think Freddie gets the least love of those three by far. Okay, like I said, Lindsay Buckingham is my next one, and I just think he's a fantastic guitarist. Yeah, he doesn't play with a pick. Nemo and Nunn says Adrian Belew. I didn't think of him. That's a good one I would have added. I would have added him to the third category. And I'll get to the other categories when we finish this list. But this is famous players who don't get their due. All right. So here's my next person who I think is a fantastic guitar player. Yeah, Jimmy Herring isn't that famous, I would say, Roadie's Jam Cave. Good to see you on, by the way. I think he belongs in a different category. I think he belongs... We're going to do three categories, sorry. Let me just tell the categories now. Number one is famous, but don't get their due. Number two is basically unknowns or studio players who... are on lots of different albums, who are not sort of classical musicians. And then the third one is what I call almost guitar heroes. So an example of an almost guitar hero would be Rick Derringer. Rick Derringer, at least to me, is not quite that famous. I mean, he's famous enough, but Hold On Sloopy, yeah, and he did some other stuff. That guy was almost a guitar hero, but didn't quite make it as that, right? All right, anyway, played with some great players. Anyway, I think he doesn't get his due. All right, maybe Jimmy Herring belongs in the second category. I'm not sure. Here's my next guy. I have somebody who's very famous, but doesn't get his due. Ron Wood. Ron Wood is a fantastic guitarist. He's a great rhythm player. He's actually a really good lead player, in my opinion. And plays that sort of R&B stuff and just has a great feel for it. Real great feel for it. A great sound. But Keith and Mick get all the credits for that. But Ron Wood, I mean, he played around too. He played a lot of stuff. All right, let's move on. So here's the next one. Yeah, Rick Derringer plays on a lot of stuff. Nils Lofgren, I like that. Here's the next one. Now, some of you may disagree because he'll come up on top 10 lists, but only in his genre. Hey, Roadie's Jam Cave. Happy 70th birthday to you. He'll only come up in his genre, and that's Steve Howe. So Steve Howe, if you recall, back in the 70s, he used to win, and maybe even in the early 80s, he used to win best all-around guitarist all the time. Jeff Skunk Baxter, I don't know, I think Jeff Skunk Baxter gets a lot of credit. Red Volkert, I don't know, is he a rock player? I'm not sure. Bill Kirkin, sure. Papa Chubby, maybe. All right, anyway, Steve Howe, I think, was a very innovative guy, and a lot of people copied Steve Howe, like, for example, I believe Elliot Easton did. And just a great all-around guitarist. And he's largely, I hate to say it, but he's largely forgotten these days. All right, here's my next person who I think deserves to be in almost every top 10 list when people talk about great guitarists. And he's almost never there. He's, in my opinion, probably the most melodic of the guitar heroes of the 1970s. And just had a great mind for playing melody and improvising. Incredible improviser. And it's Peter Frampton. Now, I know Peter Frampton is famous and people talk about how good he is. But I've never seen him listed alongside with Van Halen or Hendrix or Clapton, and in my opinion, he's every bit as good as some of those. Maybe not quite as successful, and that's why he doesn't come in. Yeah, Steve Howe. Read between the lines, says Alvin Lee. I don't happen to think he's all that... Oh my gosh, I'm going to say it. I don't happen to think he's the greatest player, but he plays fast for sure. But I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? He had some stuff. I mean, he certainly was, in his day, amazing. Amazing. All right. Here's the next one that I think maybe I'll get some shade on. Oh, Albert Lee. Oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot about him. I forgot about putting Albert Lee in here. Oh, my goodness. All right. That's a good one. We're still on famous players that don't get their due. Here's one you'll probably disagree with me on this one. Joni Mitchell. Joni Mitchell's compositions are really interesting, and she obviously she creates these really ridiculous meters in her singing and her playing. It has this ethereal quality. Yeah. Gary Moore is a guitar god. No, somebody said Tom Scholz. Yeah. All right. Anyway, I'm going to end up with that. I'm going to just leave it at there. I'm a huge fan of Joni Mitchell. Really think she's great. Ooh, somebody said Gary Richrath. I wish I would have put that in. All right. All right, here's my next one. Again, this is very similar to Ron Wood. And maybe some of you will disagree, but I think it's very similar to Ron Wood. This guy is known for his rhythm playing, and he's a real inventive rhythm player and songwriter. And it's Johnny Marr. Now, people who know Johnny Marr often rate him very highly. Yes, Mark Siebes, alternate tuning's queen. Yeah. P. Swain, did anyone mention Terry Kath? Yes, Terry Kath was mentioned. Yep. Terry Kath, and now somebody's mentioning Neil Schon as well. I never understand why actually those two don't get up on the top 10 or on high lists. And I think because they kind of have the characteristics that get you up on top 10 lists. They play super fast. I mean, honestly, that's what gets you on a top 10 list is you play super fast or you play some riffs that are really well known. So Jimmy Page will get up there. Hendrix gets up there because he's super well known. But if you Google any of these top 10 lists on YouTube, you get all metal players. So I would think Terry Kath is a sort of proto metal guy. He could play super fast. Same with Derringer. I wonder why he's not on there. And same with Neil Schon, who could certainly play super fast. All right. Here's my next one. I'm kind of leaving on the... I'm staying on the acoustic side for a moment. It's James Taylor. So, guy who has incredible tone, comes up with great arrangements, has a real interesting style, and is widely copied, both for his vocals, but his guitar is really, really good and influential. James Severin's all over Gary Moore, I see. I'm a huge fan of Gary Moore. I actually don't think he's underrated, though, because people think that or underappreciated. I think he's pretty heavily appreciated. Okay. All right, let's see. Oh, Jorma Kaukonen. Yeah, he's good. I agree, Jeff. No one sounds like JT. One thing that somebody pointed out to me, and actually I'm a huge fan of the folk player and singer Paul Brady. If you don't know Paul Brady, you should listen to him. Listen to his version of Arthur McBride. Some great guitar work there. And so one of the things that this friend of mine said, he's a teacher at Ithaca. He used to work with Rick, Beato. And he said, whenever you hear a James Taylor version of a song, it's very hard to not think of that version whenever you hear that song again. And I think that's an interesting quality. I think a lot of that has to do with his guitar playing. Yeah. Yeah, why are you looking at me? Rory Gallagher in America. I guess I would agree with that. Again, he has sort of the characteristics that you'd think would be highly prized. You'd think he would, because he plays fast, he plays a bluesy sort of thing, so it's really accessible to a lot of people, and so forth. Panama Jeff says, Tommy Emmanuel. Well, there's no better player on planet Earth than Tommy. Except classical players, maybe. All right, so here we go. The next one I would say is The Edge. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, oh my God, he's overrated. Sorry to say to everybody here, but the sound of the guitar is an important aspect, and there is nobody who's more inventive or influential than The Edge. All right, so we're still talking about famous players. Now, we're trying to keep in rock, so Panama Jeff says Roy Clark. That's kind of pushing it just a little bit. Leo Kottke definitely is not a rock player, I would say. Michael Schenker. Yeah, I would say he's underrated or underappreciated for sure. Highly influential. Okay, I think I'm getting to my big names in the underappreciated. Though these guys are great players and they're famous, but I still think that they're underappreciated. Best thing about JT was Carly Simon. Well, I like Carly Simon too, but I would have to disagree. His guitar playing is sublime. All right. Yeah, I agree. Lighten Up Francis. There's nobody who has been more influential since the mid '80s than The Edge. Every studio player now has to get his sound exactly and so forth. All right, so I'm going to continue on this. So I already mentioned this person's name, but Elliot Easton. I think Elliot Easton personally, I think, was the guy who bridged rock and new wave in an effective way, and his especially his solos, but his rhythm is really simple and fits the song. His solos really fit the song. He's a great player. What I like about him is he's got this virtuoso technique. He came from Berkeley, but he doesn't show it off. So in my opinion, for example, let's compare, say, him with Neil Schon. Now, I think a lot of people are going to disagree on this one. But Elliot Easton never shows off. Now, he may not be able to show off the way that Neil Schon can. Neil Schon has probably some of the fastest licks that you're going to hear. But I always thought that Neil Schon often marred his solos by simply overplaying on a number of the lines. He'd play these beautiful melodic lines and then play just this forgive me here, but this super fast BS to fill up space. And I got to say, the last time I saw him live, I've seen him live a number of times and loved him. He's one of my favorites. But last time I saw him live, it was just all this. He just couldn't help himself, just overplaying constantly all night. It really bugged me. But Elliot Easton never, ever did that to my knowledge. Always played something that fit the song. What band did he play in MMA first? He played in the Cars. Mr. Thomas V says he's not getting the Edge thing. Well, I guess what I would say is I'm defining at least part of great as being influential. And there's nobody who's more influential than the Edge. You may not like that. And it was inventive. All the rhythms and the sounds that he came up with were quite inventive. So that's why I'm talking about it. All right. Here's my next guy, who I think, if you talk about classic rock guitarists, his name really ought to be mentioned up there with Page and some of the other great players. And I think this is wholly because we don't value rhythm. We underappreciate rhythm guitar with respect to lead. We like lead players. This guy could play lead, but he integrated it a lot with his rhythm playing, and he was the best, in my opinion. There's only a couple people who tie with him maybe on rhythm, and that's Pete Townshend. So Pete Townshend, plus he's an incredible triple threat, right? He could sing as well, and better yet, he could write. He could write music that was complicated but still rocked. So there we go. Phil M says James Burton, love it. Phil M says Scotty Moore. I don't know. Scotty Moore is pretty highly appreciated. All right. So Pete Townshend is my one there. I agree, Lighten Up Francis. The Edge is quite good. Okay. Here's my last one that I'm going to mention, who I think is underappreciated, because I think it's a tough call between, if you're talking about who's the... Now, this is really going to get me in trouble. I think it's really a tough call between, is this person the best rock guitarist ever? It's a tough call between Hendrix and this guy. And this guy is the epitome of making the song, playing exactly the thing that matters in the song. And if you don't believe me, go back and listen to either his leads or his rhythms or his little breaks. And it's George Harrison. Probably the most influential player, maybe Hendrix, but George Harrison, just listen to the power in his play. Plays always the right things. I just think he's awesome. So one of my top players for sure. All right. Okay. So you can disagree, and that's all fine. It's all good. I've been really watching. Yeah, Martin Sieb says Martin Taylor for jazz. I don't know. He's a member of the Order of the British Empire. He's pretty highly appreciated. Plus, he's got the coolest guitar name, Martin Taylor. All right. Anyway. Okay. Now I want to talk about some studio greats. And here's where, I didn't mention Buck Dharma, AZD, so that's a good ad. Phil M says, what band was he in? Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, playing music guitar is about playing music, isn't it? It's not about who can wiggle their fingers the fastest. It really is about who creates a lasting impression and creates great music, or makes the music better than it would otherwise be with their guitar playing. Yeah, that's right, G-Mac. He plays other things. Okay. Oh, yeah, Elton John's guitarist. He had two of them, Caleb Quay and also Davy Johnstone. They were both excellent musicians. So we're going to talk about studio greats and unknowns, and I think that Davy Johnstone, Caleb Quay would be good in that one. And I think somebody mentioned Tim Pierce earlier. He is no longer underappreciated, I think, with his YouTube fame. But there's a lot of guys who were studios, top guys in like the 80s and 70s and 60s and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to talk about here. So Nemo Unknown says Tommy Tedesco. I'm going to start with the person who I think is perhaps played on more studio recordings than just about anybody else. Yes, AZD says Tim Pierce. It's not Tim Pierce. It's Cornell Dupree. That's where I'm going to start out. Supposedly, Cornell Dupree played on 2,500 records, on 2,500 sessions. That's a lot. And he was a hell of a player, defined a lot of style. Ooh, David Smith says Jay Graydon, a good player. All right. Here's my personal favorite on this list. Joe Messina. Many of you probably never even heard of Joe Messina. Phil X. I don't know. So Joe Messina is the backbeat guy on the Funk Brothers. So he played on so many of those Motown hits. And believe me, the guy can play jazz like you would not believe. He is an unbelievable player. And but just would come up with those really simple ideas. So I'm going to miss, tons of people here, even more than we're missing, because there's so many nameless people. But I happen to know Joe Messina because a friend of mine introduced me, and that's how I learned. He is the only, as far as I know, he's the only living funk brother. Okay, here's the next one, kind of in the same line. I was very influenced by this music, so that's probably why it's on here, and that's Jimmy Johnston. So he was the Muscle Shoals, I think, Fame Studios guy, and he was the Muscle Shoals guy originally, and he plays on so many of these things. Now, there's so many other players who were there. I think, Mr. Thomas V is mentioning James Jamerson, who is probably the most amazing of the Funk Brothers with his bass, always finding that great stuff. But, and plus, I didn't mention Steve Cropper. Somebody's mentioning Larry Carlton. I think Steve Cropper and Larry Carlton actually are very well appreciated today. But guys like Jimmy Johnson are still not that appreciated. All right. Here's the next one I'm going to put up here. There's another one that may surprise you. Ray Parker. So who's Ray Parker? Ray Parker is the guy from Ghostbusters. Who are you going to call? Ray Parker Jr., I think it is. Who are you going to call? It's that guy. He's a phenomenal guitarist, and he played on a lot of the funky stuff from the 70s. Has great rhythm chops, and it's a fantastic player. So we could go on forever. I see somebody mentioning Elliot Randall, Chuck Rainey, Louis Shelton. Yeah, Ray Parker Jr. Yeah, bet you didn't know that. Or maybe you did know it. I don't know. All right, I mentioned this guy, Tommy Tedesco. Tommy Tedesco played he was in the Wrecking Crew, and along with some others who I saw, mentioned earlier as well. Jesse Ed Davis. There's so many good players, studio players. Jay Graydon, Nemo Unknown is saying, and somebody else said that earlier, Les Dudek. I saw somebody mention Jimmy Herring, who I think is a phenomenal player as well. Tommy Tedesco used to have a famous, he used to be a little more famous than he is today, but he used to have a column in Guitar Player magazine when that was the preeminent guitar communication. All right, here's the next person. Now, this person is famous, but he's not as famous for his guitar playing as he should be. Glen Campbell. So there we go. Roy Enfield says, Mark, am I losing weight? Oh, bless you. I think rather the opposite. I think what's happening is my beard is distracting from my pot belly. Jeff McManus says Tom Bukovac. Yeah, he's modern guy. I mean, I haven't heard people say, you know, that the if you're going to mention Bukovac, you got to mention who's the guy who plays with the finger picks, the real influential country guy in the. We mentioned Albert Lee, but the real country guy. I'm trying to remember his name. I'm drawing a blank. Not Roy Clark. Not Roy Clark. Roy Clark was good, but he stayed country. This guy also stayed country, but super influential. He played on all the Shania Twain stuff and so highly copied. Did all the, did all that stuff. I don't know. Not Willie Johnson. No, it's on the tip of my tongue. I'll think of him. Okay, not Chet. No. Chet's famous. This guy's not famous. He's a studio guy completely. Not Chet. You think Chet is underrated? Or underappreciated? I don't know. He's highly appreciated. Okay, here's the last one I'm going to put in. I'll think of his name. I'll look him up on my phone in a little bit. I'll think of his name. Let's see. All right, here's the next name. Now, you guys already knew this was coming up, Waddy Wachtel, because I put the picture there. By the way, on the thumbnail, it's Pete Townshend, Joe Messina, Waddy Wachtel, and Freddie King. All right, so there you go. Dan Huff, yeah, for sure. But Waddy Wachtel, he's on so many of the 70s records, very influential. I could have put David Lindley in here as well, but maybe he's a little bit famous. You know, AZD says Danny Gatton. I don't think so anymore. I think, you know, anybody... Bobby Wachtel, is that a... Fenderman, is that a brother of his, of Waddy's? Is that his name? Waddy Wachtel. So Fenderman, why don't you tell James who Waddy Wachtel is? All right. Okay. So this last category, and I think a lot of you have been naming these guys, which is great. A lot of you guys have been naming these guys. But I'm going to call this last category almost guitar heroes. So what I mean on this one, okay, got it. His real name is Bobby. Yeah, but I think James Severin was wondering who Waddy Wachtel was, and you can maybe let him know. He played with James Taylor, Andrew Gold. He's on so many of those records in the 70s. Linda Ronstadt. Just has a real signature sound and signature licks. Warren Zevon. Played with so many of those guys. Toured with JT. Yep. Johnny Strikes Up the Band's got a great solo to that. He just has a great style. And influential. Okay, so these are the almost guitar heroes. And I think, you know, some of the folks mentioned these guys, and some of them really are guitar heroes in their own right. Somebody mentioned Michael Schenker, and you know, Gary Moore for sure is a guitar hero, one of the last ones. Rory Gallagher was mentioned. Oh my gosh, I did not. Phil M. I love that edition of Honeyman Scott. He was a throwback, a really nice guitar player. But here's my first one. Okay, so here we go. Here are guitar heroes who weren't. Or maybe they made it, but not quite. So here's a guy who really should have been a huge guitar hero, but didn't quite make the same level. It's Mike Bloomfield. So, you know, Clapton gets the credit, and Beck get the credit for bridging rock, and Page get the credit for bridging rock and blues. And then you hear a little bit about Mike Bloomfield, but not a ton. Yeah, Mr. Thomas V., I agree. David Lindley is one of my favorite players ever and deserves to be on this list. Okay, here's my next one. Now, this guy did achieve guitar hero status, but people don't talk about him too much anymore, and I think probably could. He was really an inventive player. I liked him a lot. And, yeah, Mark Siebes, Robin Ford. I'm not putting him on because I think of him more as blues. All right. Okay, and it's Paul Kossoff. So anyway, I think Paul's work was just phenomenal. Died way too young. He's appreciated, but I don't think he's appreciated as much as he could be. He was a real trailblazer in the early days. So David Smith says Eric Johnson, and Mark Sieb said Robin Ford. I want to talk a little bit about Eric Johnson. I think he kind of goes in the same vein as Danny Gatton. Now, these guys create their own music for sure, but it never became really popular. And it seems to me they have the right appreciation and people appreciate how good of guitar players they are. They're big in the guitar community, and that's kind of where they belong, you know. I think, you know, most people listening to Steve Vai or Satriani or Eric Johnson or Andy Timmons, I like all that stuff, I really do, but it's made for guitar players, and they are appreciated in the guitar world. So I would honestly, I think Eric Johnson is not underappreciated. Danny Gatton, same way now, but during his lifetime, Danny Gatton was underappreciated for sure. Okay, here's the next person who I think is almost a guitar hero, but didn't quite make it. Maybe he should have belonged on the first list, and it's this one, Roger Fisher. So Roger Fisher from Heart came up with all that inventive stuff early on, those weird tunings, and people will sometimes mention Howard Leese, but almost never mention Roger Fisher. Yeah, I agree, David Smith, Paul Kossoff, and I apologize if I've spelled some of the names of these guys wrong. But Phil M says Dwayne Bailey. I've never heard of him, so maybe. You know, Drew Abbott was Bob's guitarist for a long time. I think he's good, but you know, it's where he belongs, I think. Anyway, Roger Fisher, great player. Never became a guitar hero to my knowledge. Okay, here's the next person who, when you listen to him, you start to wonder why he didn't become a guitar hero. Read between the lines says Robin Trower, maybe, but I think Robin Trower kind of did become a guitar hero. I mean, when people go to see Robin Trower, I've seen him several times, you get what you ask for, and he's a great player. I think people like him a lot. Maybe, read between the lines, maybe people like threw shade on him because he sounded so much like Hendrix, but man, he's a good player. He's a good player. Okay, here's the next one I'm going to say. Some of you may know this guy. I think most of you will. Jan Ackerman, or Ackerman. David Smith, Bonnie Raitt. She didn't make it through my printer, so I had Bonnie Raitt up on the should be more famous than she would. Okay, but Jan Ackerman, I think he's still around, and yeah, he's the guy behind Hocus Pocus by Focus, and just a fantastic player. Can play jazz, anything you want. AZD, Alan Holsworth. I don't know. Talked to so many people. He was highly influential. A lot of people knew who he was. He didn't market himself well, that's for sure. And he played this esoteric jazz. So I don't include him because he's not a rock player. I wouldn't say he's a rock player. I'd put him along with guys like Satriani and Vai. And if we were talking about Satriani and Vai, if we were talking about guitarists who made music for other guitarists, yeah, maybe he was a little underappreciated. But really trying to talk about, you know, rock genre. And I don't think Holsworth fits in there. Great player, though. Unbelievable. His work that he did with Bruford is my favorite stuff that he ever did, because I think he was reined in a little bit. He didn't play as much. Yeah, thank you, Fenderman, for correcting the spelling. I knew I had his spelling wrong. Should be Dutch spelling. Okay, here's my next one. Jerry Doucette. Yeah, that's for my Canadian friends out there. Jerry Doucette, I believe, was poised to be the next guitar hero, and he really had some incredible stuff. But luck was not on his side, because in 1978 Van Halen hit, and that was the end of that. That was the end of that really fast sort of blues and classic rock playing being a big deal. And so he didn't make it. And he didn't have too many hits. Mama Let Him Play. Yeah, what a great song. If you haven't seen it, see it. Walter Trout. I think of him as more of a blues player, and he's kind of a modern guy. I'm not sure of his famous songs that he's done. Bob Weir. Yeah, I think Bob Weir would have fit into the first category, so I agree with that. Okay, here's my next one. What would this list be of people who were guitar heroes but didn't quite become guitar heroes without Rick Derringer? I mean, honestly, the dude has such unbelievable chops, and he had them really early on, and he kept them throughout his career. He can play like anybody, and maybe that's part of the problem, is that he never really had his own style defined enough for people to recognize it. But Rick Derringer, for sure. I happen to hate his music. I think his music is not interesting, and I think that hurt him. But his work with other players, and the one hit that he did have, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, just an incredible player. Incredible player. So AZD 85-224 mentions Adrian Belew. I forgot about him on this list, but yes, Adrian Belew, and to a lesser extent Fripp. I think Fripp gets his due. Personally, I think he gets the due that he's deserved. A lot of people talk about Robert Fripp being really inventive and a great player. I almost never hear Adrian Belew mentioned as a great player, and he was so innovative, and he is a fantastic player. He's still around. All right. Yes, and I agree. Rick Derringer is an unbelievable player. Okay, we're getting to the end here. I saw somebody mention this, and I didn't say anything about it on purpose because I'm getting to the end of the people that I think really, really deserve to be guitar heroes. Derringer's one of them. Here's my next guy. I never understood why he didn't become a huge guitar hero. Stephen Stills. If anybody has ever seen Crosby, Stills, Nash live, or Crosby, Stills, Nash Young live, and Stephen Stills does his guitar break where he just plays himself for like 15 minutes, you wonder what the hell this guy can't do. He's unbelievable, and I don't know, maybe I was always under the influence too much or something when I heard him, but boy, can he ever play. He can really play. All right. So that's one of my guys. I think he easily could have been there in the Guitar Heroes. Okay, this guy lives with. He lives in the same space as. Yeah, I agree, Robbie. It was great when they were dueling, but Stills had a lot more technique than Neil did. I love Neil Young's playing, but Stephen Stills had a lot more technique, and he could pull it off, and he could play a lot of things that he never, ever played, to my knowledge, on record. Just unreal how good he was. Maybe still is. All right, now this guy goes along with Mike Bloomfield, and I think he just didn't become a guitar hero because I think he had mental issues, and he just recently died. So I'm just going to mention him quickly, and that's Peter Green. Listening to Peter Green in 1967, I don't think there's anybody who could play blues rock better at that time. And if he would have continued on the line, maybe he would have been an unbelievable player. So there we go. So Peter Green. All right, here are my last two choices. Now, Phil M says Brian Setzer. Brian Setzer's a great player. The question is, do people really underappreciate him? I don't know. I think when people say rockabilly or big band or jump blues guitarists, he's always listed. Jimmy Vaughn, yeah, for sure. Okay, so here are my top N2, and one guy has not even been mentioned yet, so I think I'm right about this. So Rik Emmett. A lot of people mentioned Rik Emmett, and Rik Emmett could play everything. He was poised, I think, to become a guitar hero. He probably could have been in the mid-'80s to late 80s, and he just decided to not do that music anymore. If you've ever heard him play, he can play anything. He plays, easy listening stuff. He plays jazz. He plays swing. He plays Lots of stuff. Plus, the guy seems like the nicest guy on 2 feet. When you hear him interviewed, he's like totally humble. Just a fantastic player. You know, people often mention Alex Lifeson, but rarely mention Rik Emmett. And I think, you know, he really could have been a guitar hero big time. Yeah, Billy Mack, incredible voice. Yeah. You know, one of the things I liked about Triumph, I generally don't love their music, but one of the things I did like about it was they came out with positive music at the time. Like the themes were very positive. That's pretty rare if you look at like metal. All right, here's my last guy who I think was a guitar hero who just didn't end up being a guitar hero. And if you listen to his early stuff, you know what I'm talking about. And maybe it was because he was just overshadowed by somebody who became super popular and then went out of favor so quickly. But it's Neil Giraldo. Neil Giraldo, in my opinion, is the best player in like the early 80s. In pop rock. You know, obviously the solos that people know him for, like Jesse's Girl and Hit Me With Your Best Shot. Of course, those are great. Solos. But if you've heard him in Heartbreaker, he's obviously amazing. I did a song called Promises in the Dark. I happen to think that's one of the best solos ever in pop rock. It's just really tasteful. The guy has incredible chops, but he never overplays. He's kind of like Elliot Easton. And in my opinion, only he's probably, I'm going to say he's just a notch better because he's got a bit of an edge to him. But that's, you know, maybe that's not fair to Elliot Easton. But yeah, incredible sound. And what can I say? He became a producer, and he also discovered, to my knowledge, he discovered Tim Pierce and started Tim Pierce on his studio career. All right, the La Freak dude is Nile Rodgers, Matt. Diff break. Yeah, we said Lindsay Buckingham earlier. So there we go. That's the end of my list, and that's the end of my list. And there we go. Jim Bartlett says Alan Holdsworth is the best ever. I don't know. Would you call him a rock player? I'm not sure. He's a great player. His music I never dug all that much, except when he did it with Bruford. I like his play with Bill Bruford, like Hell's Bells, Forever Until Sunday. That stuff was really, really good. Really good. All right. Well, that's what I've got today, gang. So... All right, that's what I got today, gang. So, let's see. Holdsworth was fusion. Yeah, I guess we would say it's fusion. Yep. Played all those jazz festivals. Now, nobody said Mick Ronson. Tommy Bolin. Yep. AZD is saying that now. Tommy Bolin. I didn't mention him. There's so many people that I didn't mention. Ricky Skaggs. Really? I don't know. As a guitarist in rock, I would say no. If you listen to people like Ricky Skaggs, you know that any... if we were going to talk about great players, you know, so many of the bluegrass players are there. Now, he's primarily a mandolinist, Ricky Skaggs. So he certainly plays with Tony Rice and who's a guy... David Greer and Kenny Smith, and you know, he played with Norman Blake and Doc and all those guys who are just incredible players. I'm trying. Brian Sutton, that's the guy's name. Brian Sutton. Brian Sutton actually took Tony Rice's technique and moved it to today, and they can play super fast. But if you listen to guys like Doc, personally, I think Doc Watson. If I had to pick one player who I thought was the best, I might pick Doc Watson. In any genre, I think he's unbelievable. But that's just me. Yeah. I agree, Joe. Joe Strummer and Mick Jones. Yep. Robbie Love says Robbie Robertson. Yeah, I guess so. I dig his play. I just can't get over what kind of how he kind of screwed over all the guys in the rest of the band. Gary Richrath, yeah, for sure. Ronnie Montrose. I think somebody's Googling now, and they found Joe Bonamassa's list, where all these guys are on. Robbie Robertson, Tommy Bolin. I've read his list too. Ronnie Montrose. Rod Price. I don't know Rod Price. David Smith says Andy Summers. Yes, Andy Summers is a good addition. I think that Andy Summers is underappreciated largely because of the same reason as Ronnie Wood and some of the other folks. Hey, Herbert. No, Don Felder has not been mentioned, so that's a good person to mention for sure. But Andy Summers is primarily a rhythm guitarist, and really inventive rhythm and difficult rhythm too. That's underappreciated. Andy Griffith. Ron, what are you talking about? Can't do that. Okay. So Louis Alcivar says, what about the guy who played in Smart Patrol with Devo? I don't know anything about that. Sorry. Billy Mack says, Wayne Kramer, he was better than many realize. I don't know who Wayne Kramer is, Billy. Or Dominic Miller, the kid on Banjo and Deliverance. Okay. Oh, TBA said I mentioned Felder. Well, a lot of people were talking. Sorry, TBA, buddy. Don't see every comment. I was also playing and looking at stuff. Richie Blackmore, unrated. I don't know. He's pretty highly rated, I would say. The only question is, I would say with Richie Blackmore is, does he deserve to be like on the top 1, 2, or 3? Yeah. If he does, then you would say I think he's underappreciated, if you feel that. If you don't, then otherwise. Yeah, Mark Sieb says, a guitarist for Huey Lewis. I totally agree. That guy has real good taste and good player. James Severin says what he's been saying all along, and Gary Moore was a guitar god. Yeah. Wayne Krantz. Yeah, so David Smith, who did Wayne Krantz play with? What songs did he do? Can you call Malcolm Young underappreciated? I think so, yes. I would say so. Somebody said Mike Campbell early on, and I would have to agree with that. Phil M. says Brian May. I don't know. Brian May comes up pretty highly on a lot of lists. I think he came up in a guitar player poll ahead of Jimmy Page. He finished number 1. And it was widely panned. Like, how can you guys put Brian May above Jimmy Page? I don't know. I think he gets a lot of love, Brian May. He gets more love than, say, Elliot Easton does. And I kind of think those guys are roughly equivalent. But then again, Queen was maybe a better band than the Cars were, eh? Yeah, maybe. Definitely. Wayne Krantz is a soloist jazz player. Well, look, I mean, hey, if we're going to include jazz players, how many jazz players are underappreciated? They're all freaking underappreciated, right? Except for George Benson, who chose to make money. All the other guys go broke. I guess Pat Metheny does okay. All right, Dr. No. I don't know Dr. No. Rogers Nelson, the guitarist. Who is that? Rogers Nelson. Diff break. Who is Rogers Nelson? Bill Nelson. Who is Bill Nelson? How about Joe Perry? I don't know. You know who I think... Ron asked, how about Joe Perry? I don't know. Is Joe Perry underrated, or is he... the guy... Who's the guy who... Brad Whitford is underrated. He played basically the same stuff for half of the parts that in Aerosmith. But Joe Perry was the only person who was there who was rated. Yeah, let's not go into jazz and say who's underrated in jazz. Emily Remler. Yeah, I get it. I don't know. You could say whatever you want. Frank Gambale, the thunder from down under. Prince. I don't know. I think Prince gets his due, I would say. A lot of people think he's like one of the greatest guitarists. Oh, Rogers Nelson was Prince. Got it. Thank you. Oh, wait. Rogers Nelson was a Prince as a pseudonym. Perry is overrated. Well, again, I want to be a little bit careful about that. There aren't too many players who can play funky like Joe Perry could. And those riffs, not too many do it. I mean, the only riffs that survived into the 2000s were the riffs that were funky, like that rock funky, that I can remember were stuff like Nuno Bentoncourt did some and Slash did some. They brought over that funky sort of heavy rock. But Dr. No, Bad Brains. It doesn't help. Bad Brains, I don't know. Greg Lake. Now, somebody was talking to me about who's the other guy in the Moody Blues. They really liked him and thought that he was underrated. They were talking to me on my other thing there. All right, well, hey, anyway, gang, I'm gonna head out, and I'm gonna call it a day. I want to thank you all for coming. Steve Lukather, yes. Colin Hay, don't know him. I want to let you know I do have, if you haven't yet visited my site on Teachable, I've got 5 courses up there already, including a 40th, can you believe it, 40th anniversary teaching of Back in Black. I do all the rhythm parts, yes, including Malcolm, and both leads. I do the lead, the amazing main lead, and then I do the searing lead at the end. So I do that one too. Plus, I've got Dock of the Bay. I've got Beginning Blues for the Beginning, and of course Rock 70s. We're going to have more content up as we go on. If you haven't yet joined and you're on Facebook and you haven't yet joined the Joy of Guitar, you should do it, because we are learning songs in a much deeper way than we can on the YouTube channel. So if you want interaction, that's the place to go. And I may be doing all my live streams from there at some point, because it's just such an easy. YouTube's such a difficult live stream. Honestly, it's a difficult live stream platform. So I wish they would do it. All right. Well, anyway, hope you enjoyed this one. I want to thank everybody for coming on. Thank everybody for anybody who's donated in the last week or so, but especially last week, but at any time. Going to have my new website coming up pretty soon. And yeah, if you haven't yet, check out my stuff on Teachable. All the links should be in the description below the video, and I will post them in the comments as well. All right. Have a great Sunday. Hopefully some of you have tomorrow off as well for Labor Day if you're in the U.S., and I hope you enjoy that one. Do take some time, enjoy your family, go fishing, have a beer, whatever. Oh, I'm sorry, have a soda. Whatever beverage makes sense for you. James Severin, listen to some Gary Moore. And yeah, Jim Bartlett, we mentioned Johnny Marr for sure. Okay. Maybe I should post the list that I came up with, and we can put more in. All right. Anyway, enjoy your Sunday. Thanks a lot. We'll see you on the next live stream.